I was assigned to study a primitive bipedal species known as humans, and I cannot pretend I was pleased. Our archives already contained more than enough evidence of their ridiculousness. They were a species that invented something called reality television, in which they voluntarily filmed their worst impulses for mass entertainment. They worshipped glowing rectangles filled with emojis, consumed hamburgers the size of their heads, and used combustion engines fueled by liquids they themselves admitted could explode catastrophically. Hardly the mark of an advanced civilization. Still, Command insisted that this species merited direct observation. Some claimed humans showed peculiar resilience. Others muttered about unusual creativity in conflict. I suspected both groups simply wanted an excuse to watch these bizarre bipeds firsthand. When a mission was assigned to me, I accepted with reluctant superiority. It would, I thought, be a chance to prove once more that human mythology about itself was laughable. Our vessel descended over a remote forested region on their North American continent. The decision to take a specimen in isolation was deliberate. We wanted no interference, no unnecessary noise. The target was identified quickly, a male, perhaps mid-30s by their reckoning, sitting alone beside a riverbank. He was engaged in some archaic ritual called camping. Smoke rose from a small fire. His shelter was made of fabric stretched across poles. It seemed absurd that a creature so frail would voluntarily abandon the safety of cities to sit in the wilderness with nothing but sharpened sticks and packets of dehydrated noodles. I instructed my team to move swiftly. Paralysis beams were calibrated, containment fields engaged. The human looked up once as our vessel shifted the air above him. His gaze was steady, almost bored, as though he had seen stranger things than a descending alien craft. Before I could analyze that detail, the beam struck him and he collapsed soundlessly. Docile, my enforcer muttered, his voice smug. He dragged the human aboard without ceremony. The scientist prodded the unconscious figure with instruments, her mandibles clicking in faint disdain. Physiology unimpressive. Weak musculature compared to baseline. Neural density oddly unpredictable. We will study more. I reclined in my command chair, savoring the ease of it all. Primitive, just as I had claimed. Perhaps too primitive to even bother interrogating. During transit back to orbit, I took the liberty of reviewing human cultural artifacts once more. The archive was a treasure trove of absurdity. There was something called Florida Man, a recurring pattern of headlines documenting an endless string of catastrophes involving one of their own citizens. At first, I assumed this Florida Man was a single chaotic figure, a sort of terrestrial warlord. Later, I realized it was not one man at all, but a collective designation for their madness. The realization did not reassure me. If anything, it suggested a systemic flaw. We placed the human in containment, restrained secure. I ordered the scientists to prepare neurological scans, though I doubted we would find anything beyond chaos. I began dictating my preliminary report. Subject captured without resistance. No signs of exceptional behavior. Human species appears to be even less threatening in person than in archive. Even then, something unsettled me. It was not the human's frailty, obvious, undeniable, but his expression in those last seconds before unconsciousness. He had not screamed. He had not even widened his eyes. Instead, he had smiled faintly, as though amused by the interruption. I dismissed the thought as irrelevant. Surely, it was the random twitch of failing motor control. My enforcer, less troubled by nuance, declared we should test the human's tolerance for pain. So fragile. I wish to know how quickly they break. Not yet, I said sharply. Protocol demands observation first. The scientist adjusted her scanners. Neural activity is unusual. Patterns inconsistent with expected baseline. Some regions hyperactive, others dormant. Almost as if she hesitated, which irritated me. As if he was already anticipating something. Anticipating what? He was unconscious, strapped to our table. He was a primitive creature whose civilization still debated whether birds were descended from reptiles. What could he possibly anticipate in the presence of superior minds? To distract myself, I continued reviewing their culture. They glorified individuals called action heroes, often portrayed by loud figures who fought impossible odds with bravado and clenched jaws. One name recurred in human references: Chuck Norris. The records were inconsistent, half legend, half jest, but always delivered with reverence and fear. I scoffed. Surely no such entity existed. More likely a mythical construct invented by a species desperate for heroes. Hours passed. The human remained still, breathing evenly. My team relaxed, their arrogance matching my own. We had captured prey without challenge, and the rest would be routine. Dissection of thought, cataloging of weaknesses, eventual disposal. Yet I found myself staring at him longer than necessary. The faint smile still lingered on his lips, unbothered by the tubes and restraints. Why would a creature smile under abduction? Why would he not thrash, not whimper? When the scientist left to recalibrate her instruments and the enforcer dozed in his chair, I remained alone in the chamber. I leaned closer to the containment field, studying the human's face. His eyes fluttered, then opened. Not wide, not panicked, simply open. And then he looked directly at me. No startle, no cry. Only steady focus, the kind of gaze one gives an equal. Slowly, impossibly, he smiled again, broader this time, deliberate. My heart's lurched. He should not have been awake. The paralysis beam guaranteed unconsciousness for 12 hours. He had awoken in less than 4. The human spoke softly, his voice calm. You must be the leader. I froze, words caught in my throat. He should not know that. He should not know anything at all. Before I could respond, he continued. Don't worry. I won't scream. Wouldn't help anyway. His tone was conversational, as though we were sharing drinks beside his campfire. But you should know something. I was awake the whole ride up. I counted your crew. I mapped your routines. And I know what each of you does. The enforcer stirred, confused by the sound of human speech. The scientist returned, instruments in hand, and nearly dropped them when she saw his open eyes. I forced my voice steady. Impossible. You were paralyzed. His smile widened, but his eyes remained unreadable. You keep telling yourselves that. The chamber fell silent. The air seemed thinner, as though our ship itself withheld breath. I realized then that the central conflict had already begun, though none of us had recognized it. We had abducted a man, yes, but in awakening, he had abducted our certainty. Our confidence wavered under the weight of his calmness, and for the first time since the mission began, I felt something disturbingly unfamiliar. I felt afraid. The chamber was meant to be impregnable. We had designed it for predators with tusks like spears and hides impervious to plasma. It was not made to contain something as fragile as a human. That was our mistake, assuming fragility equated to weakness. When the subject stirred earlier than predicted, my science officer panicked, certain the sedatives had failed. I dismissed the concern. He is still paralyzed, I said with authority. Yet when the human's eyelids fluttered and then opened fully, I felt the hollowness of my own words. What unsettled us most was not that he awoke. It was how he awoke. There was no gasp, no scream, no disorientation. He blinked slowly, surveying the room as if we were guests in his dwelling. His gaze settled upon me with an unnerving patience. Then he smiled, not the nervous grin of prey attempting to appease a predator, but the calm recognition of an equal, or worse, of a superior humoring an inferior. Morning, he said. The translator lagged half a second, but the intent was unmistakable. His voice was steady, conversational, utterly devoid of fear. One of my soldiers, a hulking enforcer with claws sharp enough to rend hull plating, recoiled as though the word itself were venom. I attempted authority. You are restrained. You are under examination. You will remain calm. He chuckled softly. You're the boss, huh? Or are you just middle management? The translator faltered, trying to capture the nuance, but even stripped of idiom, the sarcasm bled through. My officer hissed in outrage. I silenced him with a gesture, though truthfully, I too was stung. He should have been terrified, not taunting. He began to speak again, slowly, deliberately. You got the scientist there. She's the one taking notes, right? And Muscle over there, Big guy, not much for talking. And you? His eyes flicked back to me. You're the one running this show. Or at least, you think you are. He had named our roles with unnerving precision. I demanded to know how. He shrugged against the restraints, entirely at ease. I've been awake since the river, he said. Felt your little beam tickling my nerves. Figured it was better to play possum. Gave me a chance to study you. The chamber seemed to grow colder. My crew shifted uneasily. I barked that his claim was impossible, that no human nervous system could withstand our technology. He just smiled again. You might want to check your math. We tried to re-establish control through procedure. Scanners were activated, electrodes applied. Yet instead of confusion or fear, he studied the devices with professional curiosity. Not bad, he murmured. Adaptive frequency modulation, though your fail-safes are sloppy. If I were grading you, you'd get a C-. The insult stung deeper than it should have. He was not mocking in the tone of prey squealing before death, but as an expert critiquing the work of amateurs. I told myself it was bluff, nothing more. Yet when he adjusted his head slightly toward one of the observation lenses and said, "You might want to recalibrate camera 3, by the way. The left spectrum is bleeding." Every one of us turned involuntarily toward the malfunctioning unit. And indeed, it was bleeding. I felt my confidence falter, though I would not show it. "Explain how you know this," I demanded. He ignored me. Instead, he leaned back as far as the restraints permitted and murmured, "So, what do you want from me? Autographs? Blood samples? Or is this just the warm-up before the probing?" He winked. That's the stereotype, right? The wink unsettled me more than the words. He was not pleading, not bargaining. He was entertaining himself. The scientist increased the neural scan intensity. Data cascaded across the monitors in patterns I had never seen from a human brain. Instead of chaotic noise, his activity was symmetrical, efficient, almost crystalline. "Impossible," my officer whispered. "His prefrontal processing is adaptive." I masked my own unease with disdain. He is a statistical anomaly, an outlier. The human laughed quietly. Outlier. Yeah, I've heard that one before. Then his voice softened, calm and deliberate. I used to be in the military. Special side of it. These days I work in security. Testing weaknesses, breaking systems, finding out what people don't want me to find. The words struck like hidden blades. My crew exchanged alarmed glances. I forced a sneer. "You expect us to believe you are some kind of warrior?" He tilted his head, studying me as though amused by my denial. "Not a warrior. A tester. You put me in a box, I'll find the cracks. That's my job." The scientist muttered to herself, recording data, struggling to interpret the neural activity. I ordered her to continue. Yet my attention remained fixed on him. Something in his calmness gnawed at me. I tried once more to assert authority. "You are isolated here. Your kind has no knowledge of your location." He raised his eyes, and in that moment the smile disappeared. His voice dropped, quiet and certain. I already sent a message. The words echoed like thunder in the chamber. My enforcer snarled, demanding to know how. The human simply closed his eyes, as if bored by the question. "You'll figure out eventually," he said. "If you're lucky." I snapped at my crew to check communications logs, to scan for transmissions, to verify containment. They obeyed with frantic haste. Nothing unusual appeared in the systems. No leaks, no breaches. Yet I could not shake the weight of his certainty. He was either a liar of unparalleled confidence or a truth-teller of unimaginable skill. Neither possibility comforted me. We attempted interrogation, but he answered only in fragments, laced with references we did not understand. He spoke of Area 51, of X-Files, of a figure called Chuck Norris, whose mere name seemed to carry ominous weight. Each phrase left us more confused, more unsettled. "Who is this Chuck Norris?" my officer whispered. I had no answer, but the human's grin told us we should be afraid. Even his silences unnerved me. When we paused, regrouping, whispering among ourselves, he lay still with that faint smile, as if he were conducting the experiment and we were the specimens. Each second in his presence eroded the certainty I had once carried like armor. The session ended not because we commanded it, but because we could no longer endure the inversion of roles. We sealed them in the chamber, locked every barrier, and retreated to the control deck. My crew muttered in disbelief, denial, fear. I told them we remained in control, that he was but one anomaly among billions of primitives. Yet my voice, for the first time in many cycles, trembled. For when I looked back at the containment feed, his eyes were open, fixed directly upon the lens, as though he had been waiting for me to look. And when our gazes met across the gulf of glass and machinery, he mouthed words the translator did not need to render. Checkmate. We told ourselves it was a bluff. We told ourselves that no primitive could have sent a message through layers of shielding and encryption designed to defy even the most advanced civilizations of the spiral arm. We clung to that belief as though it were oxygen, but deep down, every one of us suspected otherwise. The human had not spoken those words idly. He had spoken them with the casual certainty of one who knows the knife is already buried before the victim feels the wound. Interrogations continued, though they resembled interrogations less and less. In truth, it was he who questioned us. Our attempts at extracting knowledge were met with jokes, riddles, and references to cultural icons we did not comprehend. He quoted films we had not seen, lines delivered with impeccable timing that unsettled us more than silence would have. "You can't handle the truth," he declared during a cognitive stress test. My science officer recorded the phrase dutifully, unsure if it was confession, threat, or mockery. I recognized it for what it was: mastery of tone, weaponization of ambiguity. What disturbed me most was his awareness of the observation systems. Whenever we adjusted lenses, he adjusted his gaze to meet them. He spoke directly to microphones as though delivering lectures. He even commented on our procedures before we executed them. "This is the part where you increase the current to see how much I twitch," he murmured. When we did exactly that, he smirked. Predictable. His confidence eroded the morale of my crew. Even the enforcer, who once scoffed at the idea of fearing any bipedal mammal, now avoided the containment chamber whenever possible. The scientist grew pale beneath her carapace, her notes filled not with detached analysis, but with anxious questions. And me, once so certain of our superiority, I found myself dreading each new session. During one test, we attempted deep neural mapping. The scanner enveloped his skull in waves designed to reveal every synaptic spark. What we saw instead was chaos resolving into order. His neural activity did not scatter like prey in a storm. It synchronized, accelerating until the machine itself began to lag. Alarms chimed as if overwhelmed. We aborted the scan, terrified the equipment might rupture. He opened his eyes slowly and said, "Your toys aren't built for this, are they?" I demanded to know how he could manipulate our machines. He tilted his head, amused. "I don't. I just think fast. Faster than you expect. Faster than you're comfortable with." The scientist whispered that such patterns should be impossible for his species. I wanted to silence her, but I could not deny the data. His brain did not fit the models. It was adaptive, dynamic, like a system evolving in real time. It was no longer possible to dismiss him as an outlier. He was something else, something we had not prepared for. I confronted him directly, abandoning pretense. "What are you?" He smiled faintly, the same unsettling curve he had worn since the river. "I'm human. That's the part you keep underestimating." The words lingered. They sounded simple, yet carried a gravity that unsettled me more than any display of aggression. I pressed further, demanding specifics, training, affiliations, secrets. He indulged me just enough to deepen my dread. "Ex-military," he said. "Special operations. These days I work in security. You might call it penetration testing." He let the phrase hang. "I find flaws, weaknesses, exploitable cracks." He glanced at the ceiling as though through it. "And believe me, your ship has plenty." The enforcer slammed a claw against the chamber barrier, snarling that he was bluffing. The human only chuckled. "Duct tape would fix half your problems. The other half, well, good luck." That word again, duct tape. We had laughed at it in orbit, mocked humanity for revering such a crude tool. Now it sounded like a coded threat. I began to wonder whether our arrogance had blinded us to the possibility that their simplicity was a kind of camouflage. When I accused him of attempting psychological warfare, he shrugged. If that's what you want to call it. I just know how people react when they're not the ones in control. His gaze locked with mine, steady, unflinching. You don't like not being in control, do you? The silence that followed was unbearable. I broke it with an order to end the session, but his words clung like burrs. We withdrew to the command deck, debating what to do. Termination was considered, yet none of us dared. We feared killing him might trigger consequences we could not anticipate. If he had truly sent a message, eliminating him would only worsen our predicament. The scientist reviewed the neural recordings again and again, growing more disturbed each time. He was mapping us, she whispered at last, using the scan itself, reflecting it back. The thought chilled me, that our attempt to analyze him had become his method of analyzing us. Days passed, or perhaps only hours. Time lost clarity. Each return to the chamber drained more of our confidence. He never begged, never raged, never pleaded. Instead, he watched, calculated, and smiled. His calmness became a contagion, eroding discipline, undermining hierarchy. We began to feel like specimens in his experiment. One session ended with him leaning forward against the restraints, eyes locked on mine. "Do you know the scariest part?" he asked. I remained silent, fearing the answer. "It's not what I've told you. It's what I haven't." The restraints held him, yet I felt unbound by fear. For the first time in my service to the Galactic Armies, I wondered if we had made a mistake so profound it could not be corrected. We increased security protocols, additional locks, redundant seals, constant monitoring. Yet even as we layered defenses, I sensed he was already inside them, unraveling threads we could not see. Each measure we added seemed to amuse him further. During one final scan of the cycle, he opened his eyes midway and said quietly, "By the way, you should check your ship's firewalls." The scientist froze. How could he know? He closed his eyes again, as if bored. "Just a suggestion." I ended the session prematurely, my voice strained. My crew followed me out, silent, shaken. None dared admit it aloud, but the truth hung heavy. The human was no captive. He was a player, and we were the pieces. And as I looked back through the observation window, I could not escape the sensation that the game had only just begun. The first sign of sabotage came in the form of light. Subtle at first, a flicker across the command deck displays, dismissed as a fluctuation of the power grid. We had crossed uncharted sectors before, systems hiccuped. But when the flicker spread, consoles dimming one by one like stars devoured by shadow, I felt the certainty I had clung to fracture. The human's warning about firewalls echoed, and I could no longer pretend it was coincidence. I ordered diagnostics. Nothing returned. The systems did not fail. They resisted us, as though the ship itself had turned willful. My enforcer bellowed from manual override, slamming claws against the panels until sparks scattered. The scientist shrieked that her instruments were being rewritten in real time, code reshaping itself faster than she could track. And through it all, the human's face appeared on every remaining screen, calm, expressionless, unbearably composed. "You should really keep your software updated," he said, voice even, unhurried. You left the door wide open. We shouted over one another. Orders, denials, threats. None of it mattered. Every lock, every seal, every control system bent toward his will. He had not broken into our machines. We had handed them to him through the very scans we believed would expose him. In studying his neural pathways, we had offered him a mirror of our systems, and he had used it to learn their architecture as naturally as breathing. I tried to confront him through the intercom. "You will release control. You cannot operate this vessel alone." He smiled faintly, that same unshakable curve of the lips that had haunted me since the river. Alone? Who said anything about alone? Then the ship sealed itself. Bulkheads slammed shut with thunderous finality. Corridors locked, lights dimmed, compartments isolated. My soldiers pounded on sealed doors, voices rising from confidence to panic. The scientist clutched her instruments like a child clings to a toy for comfort, her mandibles trembling. The enforcer roared promises of violence he could no longer deliver. I remained at the command deck, paralyzed not by beams, but by dread. He did not need to threaten us. The silence of a ship was threat enough. We were trapped within our own stronghold, reduced to prey waiting for the predator's decision. At last, his voice filled the chamber again, not through the intercom, but through the ship itself. Every console, every vent, every vibration of the hull carried his words. You thought we were primitive. You thought we were weak. You saw duct tape and microwave burritos, and you laughed. You never stopped to ask why a species that foolish still survives. The words were not spoken in anger, but in eerie calm, each syllable deliberate, surgical. He was not boasting. He was teaching. Earth plays dumb, he continued. We let you think we're harmless. We put our chaos on display. Reality TV, ridiculous memes, cats falling off tables. All camouflage. Meanwhile, we build. We hide. We prepare. Because one day, someone like you would come along thinking we're easy prey. The scientist whimpered that his claims were impossible, that Earth lacked the resources for such deception. Yet her protest sounded hollow, more desperate prayer than argument. The screens shifted, revealing streams of data we did not recognize. Orbital patterns, cloaked satellites, transmissions laced through background radiation. He displayed them casually, as though unveiling family photographs. We watch the skies. We listen. We've been listening for a long time. You never saw us because you never bothered to look where you thought nothing could be. I wanted to disbelieve. I wanted to dismiss his words as psychological warfare. But the data glowed, undeniable, stamped with precision no fabrication could mimic. Earth had defenses. Earth had eyes. And Earth had kept them hidden, waiting for the moment arrogance would blind invaders. The enforcer attempted to seize the chamber door by brute force, his muscles swelling with rage. The door did not yield. Instead, alarm shrieked and the room sealed tighter. His strength meant nothing against a system that no longer obeyed us. He collapsed against the barrier, his fury spent, his breaths ragged. The human spoke again, quieter now, almost reflective. You don't need to fear our weapons. You need to fear our patience. You need to fear the fact that we don't quit. We improvise. We adapt. We duct tape. He chuckled softly. And we don't forget. The words carved themselves into my memory with the weight of prophecy. We pleaded for terms, not surrender. Our pride still clung to shreds of dignity, but negotiation. He gave none. He did not demand resources, did not demand oaths of loyalty. Instead, he released control of non-essential systems, as though to remind us he could give as well as take. Lights returned, doors unsealed, but only partially enough to mock us with glimpses of freedom we could not fully access. He wanted us alive, not comfortable. When I asked why he spared us, he finally turned his gaze directly into the nearest camera. For the first time since his capture, his smile faded. Because fear is a better teacher than death. If I kill you, the rest of your kind might forget. If I let you live, you'll remember. The silence after his words was unbearable. My crew avoided my eyes, their faces heavy with the weight of humiliation. We had come to capture a specimen, and instead we had been captured in spirit. The roles had reversed so completely that even survival felt like defeat. And then, as though to seal our humiliation, he asked for his belongings. The bag by the river. Bring it here. We obeyed, not from respect, but from a desperate desire to end the ordeal. Within the bag was a small, bristling creature, low to the ground, eyes sharp, teeth bared. The honey badger. It hissed at us with fearless ferocity, unafraid of beings who commanded armies across galaxies. He stroked its back with casual familiarity. This, he said, is not cute. This is survival in fur. We scoffed, but half-heartedly, because the truth was plain. The creature's defiance mirrored his own. It was small, underestimated, unafraid of larger predators. Just like him, just like humanity. When he departed, yes, departed, for it was not we who released him, but he who allowed us to watch him leave. He offered no further threats. He simply carried the honey badger under one arm and vanished into the dark with the same calmness he had shown from the beginning. We remained in silence long after. The ship returned to our control, but none of us celebrated. We had not won. We had not even drawn. We had been studied, measured, and dismissed. In my final log, I wrote what none of my soldiers dared admit. Humans are not to be underestimated. They cloak their strength in absurdity, their cunning in chaos. They laugh, they stumble, they consume things unfit for consumption. But beneath the noise lies patience, calculation, and an instinct for survival we cannot fathom. They are not prey. They are predators disguised as fools. I ended with one final reflection, one that haunts me even now. We thought we had abducted a human. In truth, humanity abducted us, and we will never escape.